The voice cut through the rain. You are one of us. One of us. Medic, stabilize him. No, it can't be. Keep pushing! Slow! Hold the weight! Got it, don't drop it! Keep it tight, soldier! Pull, pull, pull! I can't, it's too heavy! Don't stop, let's go!
The mud came up cold through her knees, and the man under her hands was not breathing right. Rain hit the floodlights sideways. The training field smelled of diesel and wet canvas. Somewhere behind her, a stopwatch clicked. Mara Calder did not look up. She kept 2 fingers pressed to the dummy's throat, reading the false pulse the machine fed her, her jaw set, her hands steady. "Leave him," the voice cut through the rain. Master Sergeant Brandt. He stood over her with a clipboard he did not need, his boots planted wide, his face flat with the kind of certainty that has never once been wrong out loud. "He's gone, trainee. Tag him and move." She did not move. "You hear me, Calder? The simulation marked him expectant. That's the call. Walk away." The other recruits had stopped working. 12 of them, frozen at their own stations, watching the one who would not stand up. Brandt let the silence stretch so they would all learn from it. "This," he said, loud now for the field, "is exactly what we cut. A medic who can't let go gets 2 men killed instead of 1. She doesn't have the cold for this work." Mara's hand never left the throat, but far across the field, under the lip of a canvas awning, a man in an unmarked rain shell had stopped walking and was watching her hands. Brandt crouched beside her, lowering his voice to the tone men use when they want to sound patient instead of cruel. "I'll say it once more. The model's vitals are crashing on purpose. It's a forcing function. You triage, you sort, you keep the salvable alive. You don't kneel in the dirt holding a corpse and feeling things." "He's not expectant," Mara said. It was the first full sentence she had spoken all night. Quiet, even, no tremor in it. "Excuse me?" "The tag says expectant because the airway reads obstructed." She turned the dummy's head a 1/4 inch, slid 2 fingers into the simulated mouth, and cleared the seated airway block the scenario had loaded. The chest monitor jumped. The false pulse climbed. It was a positional obstruction. 30 seconds of work. He's a survivor you were about to bury. For 1 beat, the only sound was the rain. Then Brandt stood up too fast, and the clipboard came up with him like a shield. "You got lucky on 1 variable. That doesn't make you right. It makes you slow." He raised his voice for the field again. The clock still ran out on him in a real fight. Reset and observe how a controlled medic works. But 2 of the recruits had glanced at the monitor. They had seen the number climb. And a number that climbs is very hard to unsee. Brandt did not like the silence that came after a recruit was right. So he did what men like him do. He doubled the bet. "New scenario," he called out, wiping rain off the clipboard. "Calder, since you love the impossible ones. Casualties in the collapsed structure lane. No litter team available. No backboard staged. Standard answer is you wait for evac that isn't coming, and you reassess." He let a thin smile show. "Standard answer is you accept the loss. Let's watch you accept a loss for once." It was built to break her. Everyone there understood that. You do not assign a 1 medic extraction with no equipment because you expect success. You assign it so the recruit fails in front of the others and learns her size. Mara stood. Mud slid off her knees. She rolled her shoulders once under the heavy training vest, looked at the lane and said nothing at all. That was the part that bothered Brandt most. No protest. No flinch. Just a woman measuring a problem. Under the awning, the man in the rain shell turned to the colonel beside him and asked one short question. The colonel answered. The man's eyes did not leave Mara. He had recognized something, not in her face, but in the way she carried weight on her left side, the way someone carries an old habit drilled in by someone who is no longer alive to drill it. He started to walk toward the lane. The collapsed structure lane was the cruelest one on the field. A casualty dummy pinned under a beam, water rising in the channel, no staged gear within reach. The scenario clock started the moment a trainee crossed the line. Mara crossed it. She did not run for equipment that wasn't there. She read the space the way you read a sentence you have read 1,000 times. The beam, the angle, the drag distance to the evac point. Her own body as the only tool on the field. And if you have been watching closely, you already feel the thing the room had not named yet. That this was not a recruit guessing. This was a recruit executing something she had been taught long before this course, by someone who counted on her to remember it. You know the moment respect should have started here. Tell me, in one line, the exact second you stopped doubting her. Brandt watched from the line, arms crossed, waiting for the failure he had ordered. The general, because that is what the man in the rain shell was, stopped 10 feet from Brandt's shoulder. Brandt did not notice him. He was too busy narrating Mara's coming defeat to the recruits. "Watch the time bleed," Brandt said. "Watch her freeze." She did not freeze. She braced her back against the beam, found the leverage point, and lifted, and the heavy vest across her shoulders began to tear along an old seam under the strain. The seam gave a few inches and held. Mara did not stop for it. She got the beam up to her shoulder, locked her knees, and walked the weight off the casualty's chest in 2 short, controlled steps. The kind of movement that looks slow until you understand how much is breaking inside the body to make it look that way. Then she dropped, hooked the dummy's harness, and started the drag. No litter, no team, just a woman moving a full-grown weight through rising water by reading angles instead of fighting them. I have seen enough uniforms to know ego when it starts talking. And I will tell you what ego sounds like when it goes quiet. It sounds like a man who narrated a failure that refused to arrive. Brandt had stopped talking. The recruits had drifted forward off their stations without being told to. One of them, a wiry kid named Ortega, had his hand half raised, as if he wanted to help, and knew he was not allowed to. The rain kept coming. Mara kept dragging. Her boots found purchase where there should have been none, because someone years ago had made her practice exactly this until it stopped being a skill and became a reflex. 20 feet to the evac point. Then 15. Her breathing was a metronome. Her hands did not shake, and the seam on her vest, already torn, was tearing wider with every pull. 10 feet. The water was at the casualty's shoulders now in the scenario's logic, and the evac point sat on a low rise she would have to climb. This was the part the lane was designed to win. The rise. One person, one dead weight, one slope slick with rain. Brandt had bet the whole humiliation on this slope, and he was not wrong to. Most recruits lost the casualty here, They got the body to the base of the climb, looked at the grade, looked at the clock, and made the reasonable choice the lane was built to teach. You cannot do this alone, so you wait. And while you wait, the patient dies on paper. Mara did not look at the clock. She changed her grip. She turned, put her back into the harness like a draft animal, and climbed it backward. Heels first, low center, using the same leverage that had moved the beam. Each pull was a fight she was quietly winning. Her boot slipped once. She did not panic at the slip. She reset the foot, found the edge of buried gravel under the mud, and drove off it. If you have ever watched someone do hard work correctly, you know it does not look heroic. It looks like patience under load. It looks boring right up until you realize what you are watching is a person doing the thing everyone else swore could not be done, and making it look like a chore. That is what the field was watching. That is what was rewriting their opinion of her in real time, second by second, pull by pull. If this is the kind of story you want more of, the kind where the payoff is earned in mud instead of promised in a thumbnail, the best way to keep it coming is waiting for you in the pinned comment. She crested the rise. Her arms were shaking now, not from fear, but from the simple arithmetic of muscle and weight, and she did not let the shaking reach her hands. She laid the casualty flat, dropped to a knee, and ran the reassessment out loud in clipped correct fragments. Airway, breathing, bleed, done. The scenario clock stopped. She had made the time. On the lane no one was supposed to make. The recruits did the math silently, the way you check a score you do not believe. And as she leaned back on her heels, chest heaving, the torn vest finally split across the shoulder and fell open along her left arm. Nobody saw it at first. They were looking at the stopped clock, at the casualty laid out clean, at the impossible thing that had just been made ordinary. Then Ortega's eyes dropped to her arm, and his face changed. On the inside of Mara's left forearm, bared now where the vest had torn away, was a tattoo. Not decorative, a unit mark, a thin line crossing a field, and beneath it 3 small words inked in a plain military hand. No one stays behind. It meant nothing to most of them. A motto, a line. The recruits saw ink and went back to staring at the clock. But the general saw it. He had crossed the last of the distance without anyone marking his approach. And now he stood close enough to read it, and the reading stopped him the way a hand stops a closing door. His weather had changed. The colonel beside him went still, watching the general's face instead of the field. Brant finally noticed the silence had a new center of gravity. He turned. He saw the unmarked range shell. He saw the 4 stars no one had announced. And he saw where the general was looking. Not at the clock, not at the casualty, but at a thin line of ink on a tired recruit's arm. "Sir," Brant started, "I didn't—" The general raised one hand. "Not at Brant. At the field. Stop." The general walked the last 10 feet himself. Rain ran off the unmarked shell. He crouched in the mud beside Mara, a 4-star officer on one knee in the dirt, level with a trainee, and he looked at the ink on her arm like a man looking at a face he had not seen in 20 years. "Where did you get that mark?" he said. Not a demand. Almost a whisper. Mara was still catching her breath. She pulled the torn vest instinctively over the arm, the old reflex of someone who keeps that part of herself covered for a reason. "It's not regulation, sir," she said. "I'll cover it." "That is not what I asked." His voice did not rise. It did not need to. I asked where you got it, because I have seen that exact line, inked in that exact hand, one other time in my life. On the forearm of the medic who carried me 3 miles out of a valley everyone else had already called a loss. The field did not breathe. The 9th Field Medical, Detachment Ashline. The general's jaw worked once. They told me the last of them was gone. So, Mara looked at him then, straight on. She wasn't the last, sir, Mara said quietly. She trained me before she went. The general stood, slowly. The mud let go of his knee with a sound everyone heard, because nothing else dared make one. I think the real wound in a moment like this is never the insult. It is the certainty behind it. Brandt had been so sure. That is the part that does not survive contact with the truth. Master Sergeant, the general did not turn to face him fully. He did not have to. Tell me again what you said about this trainee. The part for the field. Say it to me now. Brandt's mouth opened. The words that had sounded like wisdom 10 minutes ago had nowhere left to land. Sir, I assessed that she lacked the emotional control for... You assessed. The general let the 2 words sit in the rain. She cleared an airway you tagged as dead. She made an extraction on a lane you built to break her, and she carries the mark of the only unit I have ever seen refuse to leave a man in a place where leaving him was the sanctioned, reasonable, by-the-book call. He finally looked at Brandt. You taught these recruits tonight that the cold is the skill. You had it backwards. The cold is the easy part. Anyone can let go. The skill is being right about who can still be saved, and having the spine to act on it when a man with a clipboard is screaming at you to quit. Brandt did not answer. There was no answer that would not make it worse, and somewhere under the arrogance he was finally smart enough to know it. The recruits had gone from a loose cluster to a tight, silent rank without anyone calling them to it. Ortega was looking at Brandt the way young soldiers look at a man they have just stopped believing in. That look costs an instructor more than any reprimand. You cannot order it back. The general turned from Brandt as if he had already filed him away and faced the field. Every one of you watched a trainee get told she was too soft to do this work, he said. I want you to remember what soft turned out to mean tonight. It meant she was the only person on this field who refused to be comfortable with a loss. Write that down somewhere, you will find it again. He looked back at Mara, still on one knee, still half covering the ink out of habit. Stand up, Calder. She stood. Cover your arm if you want to. That's your right. But understand me. His voice dropped, and the whole field leaned to catch it. That mark is not something you hide. That mark is the reason I am alive to be standing here, ruining a master sergeant's evening. A breath of something moved through the recruits, not quite a laugh. The sound of a room changing sides. The general let the rain fall for a moment. Then he gave them the things soldiers remember longer than any order. He told them the truth about himself. 11 years ago, I was a colonel who made a bad call in worse terrain. My element got pinned in a valley that the maps and the math both agreed was a loss. Command sanctioned the withdrawal. Sanctioned, meaning the by-the-book answer, the correct answer, the answer that would have ended no careers and raised no questions, was to leave the wounded and save the rest. He paused. The certainty men carry into rooms was entirely gone from him now. What was left was just a man who had been young once and afraid and out of options. I gave that order. I want you to hear that part. I was the one who said withdraw. I told myself it was discipline. I told myself the cold was the skill. The same thing your master sergeant told you tonight. And I believed it, because believing it let me live with the order. The field was perfectly still. A medic from the 9th disobeyed me. She came back up the valley alone, against a sanctioned order, with no support and no good reason except one. She had that line on her arm. No one stays behind. She carried me out on her back across 3 miles of ground that should have killed us both, and she did not say a word the entire way except to keep telling me to stay awake. He looked at Mara. When it was over, I asked her why she had thrown away her career for one half-dead colonel who had already written himself off. She told me it wasn't a slogan. It was a debt, that every medic in that unit had carried someone before them and was expected to carry someone after. And the day they stopped was the day the unit actually died. Not when the buildings closed, but when the carrying stopped. His jaw worked once. I never saw her again. I was told the detachment was disbanded, the people scattered or gone. I have spent 11 years believing I owed a debt I could never repay to people who no longer existed. He nodded once at Mara's arm. And tonight, one of them dragged a man up a slope 30 feet from where I was standing, while a man with a clipboard called her weak. It is one thing to be proven wrong. It is another to learn that the person you mocked carries the exact thing that once saved the most senior man on the field. Brandt had managed both in the span of 10 minutes. In the rain, in front of every recruit he would ever have to lead again. He did not shrink theatrically. Men like Brandt do not. He just got smaller in the way that authority gets smaller when the thing holding it up is removed. The clipboard now just cardboard in his hand. The wide stance now just a man standing in mud. "Sir," he said, and his voice had lost its edge entirely. "I'll amend her evaluation. You'll do more than that." The general's tone wasn't cruel. It was final. "You will stand in front of these recruits tomorrow, and you will walk back every word you said about her tonight. Not because I am ordering it, though I am. Because they watched you be certain, and they need to watch you be corrected. That is the lesson now. Not her. You." Brandt held the general's eyes for 1 second, then dropped them. Understood. And across the field, the recruits watched a master sergeant accept a correction he could not argue with. And they understood all at once that the woman they had been told to pity had been the strongest person on the field the entire time. Something changes in a place when respect finally arrives. The air does not actually warm, but everyone behaves as if it has. I know what a room sounds like when respect arrives late. It does not sound like applause. It sounds like people who were comfortable a minute ago suddenly standing a little straighter, suddenly unsure where to put their hands. It is the sound of a verdict being quietly rewritten by everyone who delivered the wrong one. The general extended his hand to Mara, not as a superior, as a man paying down 11 years of interest on a debt. "I'd like to know her name," he said. "The medic who carried me, if you'll tell me." Mara looked at his hand, then took it. One firm grip. "Sergeant First Class Dana Reeve," she said. "She was my instructor at the field detachment. She found me when I had a lot of reasons to quit, and no one telling me not to. She used to say the unit doesn't end when the last building closes. It ends when the last person stops carrying the line. And she taught you that, Lane, the general said. It was not quite a question. She taught me that there is no lane you're allowed to lose just because losing it is reasonable. Mara's voice stayed level, but something moved under it. She drilled the backward climb into me until I hated her for it. Said one day I'd be on a slope with a body and no team, and I'd understand. She was right. She usually was. A pause. She didn't think the unit would end. She thought people like me would keep it open. Reeve. The general repeated it the way you set something heavy down gently. I'll see that name where it belongs. On record. Read aloud, properly, in a room with the right people in it. Not as a footnote. As the reason a general is standing in the rain tonight, instead of in a grave in a valley 11 years ago. The casualty dummy still lay on the rise where she dragged it, rain pooling around it. The clock long stopped. Mara glanced at it once. The recruits followed her eyes. And every one of them understood that the only person who had treated the simulation like a life was the one they had been told to look down on. There is a kind of person who waits for the thanks to land before they move. Mara Calder was not that kind. The general was still speaking, something to the colonel about records, about a name that needed correcting on a wall somewhere. When Mara bent, recovered her torn vest, and quietly began squaring away her station the way she had been trained to leave every position better than she found it. Not performing humility. Just done. The work was the point. The recognition was someone else's to hand out or forget. If a story like this one, earned in the mud, paid off without a single shortcut, is the kind you want the next episode to honor, the pinned comment is where you decide it gets to exist. Ortega caught her at the edge of the field. Called her. He didn't seem to know what he wanted to say. I should have... You didn't know, she said. Now you do. Carry it. She nodded toward the rise, toward the casualty, toward the lesson lying out there in the rain. Carry the line. She walked off the field before the general finished his sentence, before the recruits decided whether to clap, before Brandt could find a single word that might repair the night. The thanks arrived at a spot of mud where she had been standing a second earlier. She had already moved on to the next thing that needed carrying. The field cleared the way training fields always do. Gear hauled in, lights cut to half, the rain easing into the kind of drizzle that feels like an afterthought. But something stayed. Brandt ran his correction the next morning, in front of every recruit, exactly as ordered. He did not perform it. He just told the truth, which for a man like him was the harder thing. The recruits listened. Then they went back to work, and they worked the way people work when they have decided to be better than they were yesterday. The general kept his word about the name. Sergeant First Class Dana Reeve, 9th Field Medical Detachment, call sign Ashline. Read aloud, on record, in a room with the right people in it. A line that had almost gone quiet got its volume back. And Mara Calder went on being a trainee. She did not get a medal that night. She did not want one. She got something the rank structure cannot issue and cannot revoke. Every person on that field now knew exactly what she was made of, and so did she. That is the thing about a debt carried instead of spent. It does not stay with the one who paid it. It moves. A medic carried a colonel out of a valley 11 years ago. That colonel became a general. That general read a name back into the record. And a trainee in the mud kept the line alive long enough for all of it to matter. No one stays behind. She had simply refused to be the one who proved it false.